All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jessica Evans. I work for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and I do community involvement for this site. Just a couple things. So this mic is not for the room. It's for folks online. So it's kind of deceiving, but we have one participant online, and we're also recording the meeting. So it'll be available, in a week or two. It'll be posted, and I'll send that out to the community group. I also want to acknowledge any elected officials or staffers with elected official offices. If you could just stand up and introduce yourselves. Thanks, Danielle. Thanks, Madeline. One other thing, so we have two microphones. Ona has a mic on as well. So once we kind of get into the discussion portion, I'm going to be trying to run around and give folks microphones so it's captured on the recording and the live stream. So if you do have a question, just raise your hand and I'll come to you with one of the microphones. That way it's captured. So the purpose of the meeting and the reason we're here really is because of you all. We conducted a technical assistance needs assessment last year, and that report was finalized in June. And one of the recommendations from that report was to form a community advisory group. And so EPA, as part of those recommendations, we're here tonight. So I just want to thank everyone who participated in those. And it's really because of you all that we've started this process. We have Ona on board. So thank you all for doing that. Just quick introductions of, other folks in the room. This is Chuck Cook. He is the remedial project manager for the site with EPA. And then Ona Ferguson, and she is with the Consensus Building Institute. And she traveled here from Boston today to come give this presentation. So she's going to go through some slides, and then we're going to have a discussion of some of the things that she learned. She had some initial discussions with some stakeholders from the community, so she's going to go through kind of what she learned from talking with those who participated in that. And then from those conversations, she also has some recommendations on the best way to go about forming this group. So it's going to kind of be a discussion. She's going to present those recommendations, and we're going to get y'all's feedback. One thing, can you all see this? Because we can turn these lights off up here. Lights down? Okay. Better? Okay. All right. We also have the presentation printed over there on the table. So if you want to take any of the slides, they'll also be posted on our site profile page. We have a CAG fact sheet, some points of contact for this site, the Westlake landfill and Weldon Springs. So it kind of goes through the agency roles and the contacts associated with those agencies. And then a sign-in sheet. And I think everyone grabbed a name tag. So with that, Ona, I'll turn it over to you to get started. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. If you're in the back and you have a hard time hearing, we do not have a microphone, as you heard. You might move up. I will try to project. Give me the can't hear if you have problems, and I'll do my best, okay? Great. And I will also try to remember to repeat questions if they come from in here without the mic. As Jessica said, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about the Consensus Building Institute and myself so you know who's talking to you. And then I will share what I have done in the last, 6 weeks, which is mostly talking to many of you in the room and others, and then share recommendations for forming this community advisory group for the St. Louis Airport sites and Coldwater Creek. And I think I can advance this, maybe. Of course not. Does this have an on-off, Jessica, or some other fancy something I should know? We did it before. It's good to get the tech glitches out of the way right at the beginning. Let's see. You have to point at that. Okay, I'm going to start with the intro. The Consensus Building Institute, where I work, is a nonprofit. We do facilitation and mediation and help groups work together. We run committees, public meetings, strategic planning, negotiations, usually with a natural resource or public policy focus. And it's working out. Thank you so much. And we have people sort of around other countries, mostly here, and we're based in Boston, which is where I live. I did 2 intro slides for myself. This is the work intro slide. So I've been doing this work for over 20 years at CBI. I've been to St. Louis once, and it was like almost 30 years ago. So I've effectively not been here. So anything I'm sharing about this place comes from you. And feel free to correct me when I get things wrong, because I am, as I said, new to all of this, but have worked with committees on Superfund sites in the past, including most significantly the Hudson River PCB cleanup in New York, which is a GE cleanup overseen by EPA. And I've worked with that project for 20 years since I was just taking notes in the corner. And the Pease Air Force Base in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where they are doing a PFAS cleanup. And I worked with that group for about 7 years. And you can read more at CBI if you want to know more. This is the personal slide. I spend most of my time with my 2 sons, who are 9 and 11. I live in Somerville, Massachusetts. I also like to sing and do theater and be with my community in that way, which is very different from the kind of thinking and formal way. And my kids are obsessed with the Revolutionary War. I think because of Hamilton. I don't know if any of you had that Hamilton bug, but this was my then, I think, 7 or 8-year-old who got his costume and was guarding my house when I came home. I was like, what's happening? Anyhow, so I was hired by EPA to do these things. I want to be really clear what I was asked to do. And first off was to learn from all of you about what's going on here. And that was by reviewing some key documents for the cleanup and some press. And I've talked with EPA, I've talked with the Army Corps, and I have conducted a series of confidential conversations with stakeholders. I was asked to recommend a CAG structure. Acknowledging the should there be a CAG is the first organizing question, I think, and I'll talk to that. And I think the answer is yes, because that's what I heard from all of you, and that's what I heard from EPA. I'm not trying to bury the lead. And then to hold an information gathering session, wording funny, to hold this, and then to run the first couple of meetings. So that's what I've been brought on board for now. Oh my God. Excuse me. I can't do it. What am I doing? Can you advance it? Who has these slides on there? Hey. I interviewed 11 people. Most spoke with me for the full hour that we had allotted, and sometimes a little bit more. So Kim Baker, Ashley Bruneau, Dawn Chapman, Kristen Camuso, Chantel Jones, Karen Nickel, Danielle Spradley, Kim Byzantine, Joe Vrabel, Janelle Wright, and Rebecca Zoll. Many of you are here. Thank you. And you can go back and look at that list if you want to remember, but the idea was to talk with people who have a variety of expertise on the project and interests and could share the history, some of the issues, what might matter here. So what is a community advisory group? In EPA's, this is the EPA definition. I'm just going to read it so it's out there. A CAG is made up of representatives of diverse community interests A CAG is designed to serve as the focal point for the exchange of information among the local community and EPA, the state regulatory agency, and other pertinent federal agencies involved in cleanup of the Superfund site. Its purpose is to provide a public forum for community members to present and discuss their needs and concerns related to the Superfund decision-making process. In my experience, a CAG can be helpful in the following ways. It's a single forum for conversation, which is one thing that feels like that you have not had. In this case, the wisdom of the community in discussion can help shape decisions by the technical team doing the work, and the technical team can share good information in that one place with the community. Everybody hears the same information at the same time. You usually have press and electeds and their representatives. Everybody's getting the, okay, what's going on with the project? Where are we? And what are the community concerns at this moment together? And I see participants building relationship and eventually trust over time as people sit at the table over months and years and come to really understand each other and learn from each other. What did I learn in my interviews? First off, someone said, this area is filled with great people in a difficult situation. And I was like, that sounds right, given everything everybody has told me. I should say, the interviews, I promised, were confidential, so people could share anything they wanted with me. So I'm not attributing anything to anybody or getting too specific. People have a lot of questions about the contamination and about the cleanup. They have questions about the role of different agencies and who's doing what. They have questions about past things that were done, things that are done now or being done, and things that are planned for the future, like what exactly is planned for the cleanup. And there were also questions about like the geography and this Superfund site versus adjacent nearby sites and how those are connected. There has been exceptional community advocacy. I just heard like so much great work by so many community members to raise up these concerns and inspire action and get attention from the press, from electeds, from community members, people like holding public meetings that were attended by 150 people or 300 people over the years. And that's kind of, it's felt rare to me. It feels like special and worth acknowledging. For what sounds like very good reason, there's pretty low trust of government agencies in the community and of science by some I've heard, and of bad actors. What did I mean when I wrote that? There's like skepticism from various folks I talked to about kind of what information has been shared, when it's been shared, motivations. This kind of crosses a lot of different groups, but especially of federal agencies and over many, many years. And I also heard that some of those relationships, especially with EPA and the Army Corps, are getting better in the last couple of years, and that there's some good leadership in the community now, and people are hopeful that there's a corner to be turned. There was really unanimous support for the creation of a community advisory group. People really want this cleanup done well. It really matters. We can't go back and change what happened, but let's make it as good as it can be going forward. There was, I think there's a lot of need for, you told me, community education about the contamination and about the cleanup. I want to name that I think I will need help, or we will need help as we convene this group, identifying local representatives from the local community, like right adjacent to Coldwater Creek. And so that's still sort of open. I also heard about many, many people being sick. I heard a lot of very serious stories from many of you. And I heard about signage as an example of something that where there's some progress and something was accomplished, and some of the nuance behind that and ways it went and what was challenging there. So, and I heard that if we're holding meetings, they need to be held somewhere that feels welcoming, not behind security that makes people feel excluded and like they're not safe attending and being part of things. So a CAG seems to make sense here because people want the contamination removed. There is a cleanup underway. There are all these questions. Where is the contamination? Like, what's the plan for cleaning it up? Who's doing it? Like, when it's cleaned up, what's going to be left? How's it all going to work? What should we expect to see? What's the timeline? Like, how far out are we talking? And more, many more questions. I mentioned different groups have had to host their own meetings, which is a lot to ask of community members. Like, maybe we can set up meetings and they can participate and do all the other great groundwork that they do. There doesn't seem to be a structured forum for shared dialogue about this that is consistent, where people, I think a lot of you know each other, or many of you know many of you, but like maybe some of the gaps could be filled. And I see dedicated committees providing the function of building knowledge over time among the participants, which can kind of elevate and advance the contributions you can give to the project, because you all bring what you know into the group and learn from the technical team, and together all of a sudden that's sort of raising everybody's knowledge. So, is there anything else I want to say on that? No. So the recommendation is to form a CAG. I drafted a CAG purpose. It's very simple as I drafted it. I should say, this is my sketch for this. The whole point of being here tonight with you is for you to tell me how to make it better. So I'm going to lay out the sketch, and then I'm going to turn off the slides and we can just talk. The CAG would provide a single forum where people involved in the cleanup and community members and other stakeholders can talk together and exchange information, plans, concerns, and ideas. I recommend that this group be formed with seats for different stakeholder perspectives, and that's like the organizing logic, which is what has happened in most of the committees like this that I have worked with, where you want certain voices with certain types of expertise at the table. And I'm going to go into what those voices would be in a minute. But the roles that I would sketch out and would design some description for the committee of like, here are the different roles in the committee, here's what they each do, would be members who represent varied perspectives. They could have an alternate. Sometimes people can't attend every meeting. Technical advisors, for example, the SKIO team that came in and gave a presentation in the fall, I want to say, or maybe early this year. A facilitator to plan and run the meetings. I like a planning team with members of the committee to design meetings with me when I'm facilitating to make sure that they're responsive to the group. Liaisons for federal and state agencies. So that means they're in the room, they get emails about the meetings, and we can invite them up to present and to answer questions, but they have a slightly different role. They may not be sitting at the table in quite the same way. And the public who would be welcome at CAG meetings. And I would expect to have a bunch of people who come when they can, right? They want to hear what's going on, or they're like, oh, I know that topic next month is something I'm interested in. I'll come to that meeting. Here's my starting proposal for representation, aiming for something like 12 to 18 people. I think the geography is big enough. It can't be a very small committee. And also you probably want a variety of voices. So I have right now 3 to 5 community representatives 2 municipal representatives, one from Florissant and one from Hazelwood, 1 county representative. So those would be like appointed by the officials in those communities. 1 or 2 environmental seats, although honestly, I only heard of 1 environmental group, so that might shape that number. A couple of public health or hospital perspectives, people providing services to the community. 1 or 2 school districts that were recommended in part because of what good communication they have with families in the area, how they could be that kind of, serve that liaison role. A fire district or emergency services spot, in part because I heard that there's not always trust with the police, but that public emergency service folks are well trusted who do fire and other emergencies. So that might be a good way to fill that role. And then an economic development seat, which is common in committees like this, people who are thinking about sort of the well-being of the community for the future, for the business kind of health side. So I am not going to suggest names tonight for these, and I welcome your suggestions to me. I heard in my interviews a bunch of people who were suggested multiple times, which my instinct is to slot some of those people in, but wanted to get more ideas from all of you, either verbally as we talk, or I put index cards over there. So you can, if you feel like you'd rather be quiet about it, say, I want to suggest so-and-so, and here's why, and how to get in touch with them would be, that kind of information. I'm proposing in-person. I actually, as I looked at this slide that I had drafted a few days ago, in person, we are doing hybrid right now, sort of. We have, at least people can observe, probably, or virtual occasionally. I think people appreciate sometimes just virtual. It's simple, everybody can hear and see if that works for the committee. It doesn't for all, but we have found in the last 5 years that it's actually quite an accessible way for people to go to meetings and not have their day and evening disrupted. So some of both, probably more in person at the beginning. And in terms of frequency, I think every 4 to 6 weeks at the beginning to do a bunch of information sharing. And then it could become less frequent. Again, that would sort of follow what a planning team would recommend. So next steps for this would be to identify potential members, to send invitations to them, to schedule the first meeting, and to plan that agenda, hopefully for the next, like maybe 2 months from now, get going, something like that. And I think I had a couple more things I wanted to share. I was thinking about this. Somebody asked, one of the people I interviewed asked me to share how the interviews I did shaped my recommendations versus what I came into this thinking. So I'm happy to do that. But first, most importantly, we'll say I really had so little sense of the history of this place that the interviews shaped everything. Like I had read some press, I had read some reports, but the interviews really are the foundation. And I had EPA's recommendation that yes, a committee makes sense, but needed to know from you all if you thought that made sense. So, and that is what I heard. I also only had some of the seats kind of guessed ahead of time. So if I go back to this, I had in my template community representation, municipal and county, environmental, and economic development. Those were some I started with. I also had agriculture, which seemed not to be a thing, so I took that off. But the interviews helped me identify the hospital public health seats, the school districts, the fire and emergency services. I will say not up here because they were only suggested once or twice were clergy and maybe a cancer specialist, but maybe that goes in the public health and hospital anyway. That may be the same thing. The interviewees also gave me suggestions for who might be trusted and effective on a community advisory group. Okay, a couple more things that I learned from the group. they really helped me understand to an elementary school level, right? Not sophisticated like some of you, but the history and dynamics of these last 80 years, right? On the contamination, the movement of the contamination, and a lot of the reasons for mistrust around what had happened, what was shared, kind of a sense of lack of urgency, messaging, or obfuscation in different ways. Also disrespectful behavior around some of that. I also learned a lot about who is really well respected, at least from those 11 people, but there was some overlap and some tension among some of the community people who have worked on this issue. Also the meeting location, people said Hazelwood or Florissant, somewhere without security that will keep people out, and in person with hybrid option and maybe virtual. That was all really from all of you. People also said evenings for meetings, weekdays probably. People want advance notice of meetings. And those were some of the things that really came to me from all of you. Two final things I want to name before then we can turn off the slides or turn up the lights and just talk. Community advisory groups can be frustrating for the public, and I just want to name why that is, like what I've seen with other groups. One is that they don't have authority over what happens in the cleanup. They're advising and sharing their wisdom, and they still don't get to tell the people doing the cleanup what to do, and the people have to follow them. They can tell them what they would like to see happen, but that can feel frustrating when it's like, but everybody in this room thinks X should happen, and the technical team may or may not take them up on that. What I see is like this power of influence and persuasion and relationships shifting projects, but it's not always direct and obvious. And also, and you all know this, but Superfund projects move very slowly. It's hard to clean up environmental contaminants. It's confusing to figure out where they are, what you're gonna do about it, and then to actually do the thing. It's just like a lot of years. So that's another element of frustration that I see. So just putting that in all of our heads so we know those two things are sitting there. That's what I got. I'm gonna turn up the lights and hope to have a conversation. If I don't see you, yeah, I know, I wanna be like, I would be happy if you wanted to turn around. It's like, it's almost circle worthy. I'm happy for you, wanna do that? Like, yes, Ashley. Oh, we have a mic. Great. You can scoot your chairs around if you want, it's fine. Or like, yeah.
I had some questions about the municipalities that were included. It looks like there's quite a few municipalities that are not included on that list that Coldwater Creek would flow through. If you start at St. Anne is missing. That's on the other side of the airport, frequently excluded. But then we have Berkeley. And I believe there's a municipality that is just like a quick second before you get into Florissant. And of course, Hazelwood you have there, but you don't have Blackjack. You don't have unincorporated St. Louis County. Also Bellefontaine neighbors for if you're local, and Spanish Lake area. Both of those are near that Missouri River outpour. And so those would be important communities to also have representing from their municipality and also draw from as well.
Thank you. Do you, sometimes having a county person can send information to the municipalities? Like, there's a risk of having 15 municipal seats.
I would say they're all very strong mayor organizations. So St. Louis County absolutely represents them and does a great job and all, but you would consider those municipalities named very strong mayor organizations and municipal. So they may not take kindly to you not giving them a seat.
Thank you. Thanks, Ashley. Other reflections? I have a question. Yeah, Kristen.
Thanks, Justin. I noticed that you had the technical advisor on there, and I'm curious if you've actually spoken to him, because we've had initial conversations and then haven't really been able to get back in touch. So just curious if you've been able
Do you want
to.
to talk about it?
Yeah, I'm gonna reach out to Brian. He's still on board. Sophie's still on board.
Okay.
They're putting a presentation together for you all currently, so they're still on the project. I'll reach out to him and touch base.
Reflections, comments, things you like, things you're not sure about, things you dislike. Can you take the microphone? Wait 1 sec. Here comes.
Just before we left home, we were on the news, and that lady right there was being interviewed. That lady in the gray shirt was being interviewed tonight on Channel 5. So it might be on at 10 o'clock. You can view it security.
All right. Thank you. Ashley.
Can I just briefly add to that list? Robertson is not necessarily a city anymore, but we should really be including and be really cognizant to include that area. And I don't know, apologies if that is consumed by Berkeley or nearby areas, but because that area is under airport lot now, we still need to make sure those families have representation, and we are constantly erasing Robertson, so we really need to be mindful of that in our inclusion.
Do you want to, Ashley, do you want to email me the list? Because I just didn't capture all those. Can you, just, it's hard to note. Will you come up after it and get it? Okay, I have a note to talk to you about it. Hello, Dawn.
I think my question and my concern is just that, like, I think Chantel's like on the Zoom and stuff, but, you know, as we get to forming this looks really great, but how do we form it before we get, as Ashley was putting, more of those communities involved? Like, you know, like how, it seems like there's still, and it seems like now that we've got this initial plan, maybe the next step is to brainstorm amongst all of us outreach techniques to get further out into the community to bring more people to the next meeting so that this is more representative. Does that make sense? Can we like add a brainstorming session? Because I think there's a lot of people in this room with different platforms. Together, if we used all of the platforms we had representative, we should be able to hit all the way up to the Missouri River, which is really what we should be aiming for, is all those municipalities that this 14-mile long creek hits.
I mean, blackjack for sure, but Elkhorn neighbors is that to the right? It's really good.
Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah, but that's not, there's no neighbors. It's not, okay, no, like not even south of that? No. That's Spanish Lake. The Spanish Lake is unincorporated.
We could look at the revisit codes, and
Right.
then we could break those zip codes up into municipalities.
But the revisit codes also include the city, because we know.
And putting in the revisit codes for North County too, yeah, we could break them off the
Sure.
bottom.
I think there's also all those other seats are supposed to represent people in the region too, from a variety of perspectives. So like, hopefully the school districts tap into some people in those regions. And so I'm happy to think about this, but in my experience, just sort of using the elected municipal rep people isn't always the same as getting to the community people also. Should we,
At least one person in each of these areas.
maybe that number needs to get a little bigger.
I actually have a question. Have you ever,
I know you listed the places that you've worked on, but is this like one of the largest sites to try to form like geographically?
Ironically, the Hudson Community Advisory Group in New York is the biggest Superfund site in the country, or it was, because it's 160 miles.
Oh,
But apparently now out west in like Utah, there's a Superfund site that's like even more, because the land is so big there. But I know this is big and complicated.
what have we done to our land?
What have we done to our land? There we go.
Okay, I'm getting stuck on the words cleanup and impact. because you've got cleanup that is going to focus on those hot spots along the creek. But Coldwater Creek is a victim as well. I mean, it is one of the impacts. And I know the record of decision is only allows us cleanup along the creek, but the impact is much larger. I mean, there's not a community in the St. Louis region, and I'm talking about 10 miles from the contamination site, that hasn't suffered cancer and the impacts of all the disease spectrum that comes from this. So I think that if you're talking cleanup for this CAG, you focus on those communities that are the hot spots that are identified under the record of decision. But it seems, and I didn't go to the meeting, the Army Corps of Engineers meeting last week, or whenever, 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, but it seems that that record of decision is expanding to soils. And if it expands to soils, that's a whole nother story. And that's going to have to expand the footprint of where you go. But I mean, the word is, I saw in your presentation, cleanup, cleanup, cleanup. Cleanup is the record of decision. Is that correct? Is that what?
They're usually it's CAGs are formed to go along with a Superfund cleanup for a particular site. Chuck, correct me if I'm wrong.
So you don't have to have all of these people on the CAG, all these municipalities represented, but I think where you were going, I think is the right place, is you can then have an outreach meeting. So your municipal members on the CAG can say, okay, now it's time for us to outreach to all of our other municipal partners and give them an update and a briefing on what's going on.
That's totally right. And I didn't say, I think of a committee like this as bringing information in from everywhere, friends, family, their constituents, to the project, and then taking what they learned from the project back out, really being a voice, sort of liaison voice, because all your hundreds of thousands of community members are not going to come to a committee over time, but a few people will, right?
At the April 23rd meeting in Florissant, at the Florissant City Courts building, we were talking about how Coldwater Creek has been renamed, and on the maps that the Army Corps of Engineers has, when they go out to the public meetings, they're not showing what they are calling tributaries, but these are areas that used to be called Coldwater Creek until the 96 municipalities in St. Louis County got established. Before 1949, it was Coldwater Creek. So that's when the contamination occurred. It seems to me that they should be going back and looking at those sites too.
Thank you.
And not just saying, well, it's not called Coldwater Creek, and just not even depicting it. If you follow Coldwater Creek on the satellite maps, you can actually go all the way around the county and over to Bell Fountain. And there are places that we have heard are contaminated and that they are looking at. So I think we really need to be more thorough, and we need to document where the illness clusters are and link that to any places where Coldwater Creek has impacted us or impacted our groundwater. We do have agriculture occurring in St. Louis County. It's not a major thing, but we do eat local produce. So I think that's a big concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Other responses to any of this? Big red flags that you're like, don't do that. Now's a great time to share concerns.
For a long time we had,
For a long time, we've had a lot of parochial schools, Catholic schools in the area. There's less and less now, but I don't know if they might be missing off that school district list there, or if there might be some representatives from, religious folks or religious schools that would be missing if we did not include them on that school district list.
Thank you. I'm also very happy to keep a list of, I usually keep a list of interested parties, which is anyone else who just wants to know when the meetings are happening and get any key documents that are released. So I always will have that also. in addition to these seats. Oh, in the green.
Just looking at your list, it occurs to me you have one economic development person, but I don't see anyone from the labor community on the list. Like
From the
maybe
labor
the
community?
building and trades, the people who might ultimately be tapped to help with certain aspects of the cleanup, or that would be otherwise prominent in North County for other reasons because of occupational reasons or otherwise. Maybe they might like to send someone. And I also agree with the idea of involving clergy. I think the Archdiocese could be an interesting choice.
Do you mind writing those things also for me on an index card with as much detail as
Absolutely.
you have?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. Do you want to can you pass that forward to Kristen in the gray?
I was just going to piggyback off of what you said about interested parties, even if they're not coming to the CAG. I assume that once this is formed, we can get like an email list to send out information to people.
Yes. Yes, there can be an email, like a listserv for people who want to keep updated on the CAG. Yes. What else? The question is, do we think there are going to be cuts and impact to the Environmental Protection Agency right now? Is there going to be money for the cleanup? I don't work at EPA, so I'm going to hand the question to my colleagues here on the spot. What? They don't pay for the cleanup. They don't. Right now, the Department of Energy is paying for the cleanup, paying the Army Corps, right? Somebody correct me.
Yeah, that's unfortunately not an EPA question. That's an Army Corps question.
I think we don't know. It's a big questions. Money comes from Congress to the military is coming from the back. Commerce? Congress. Thank you. Other thoughts? So I have some names in mind. I know you probably do too. If you can think of somebody who would be good to sit on this, I would really love it if you would either say it now slowly so I can write it down, or write it on an index card and tell me what seat the person would be good for, and if possible, who suggested them, and like kind of why, and any contact information you have. Because then I have a starting place for trying to sort this out in a smart way. Or organizations that you think would be good. That's sometimes an easier lift.
I myself am interested in being on the board. My name is Katie Powers. I teach at Cross Keys Middle School in the Ferguson-Florissant district. So I live in Florissant, I work in Florissant, and a lot of the people I love live in Florissant. So I'd say I'm a big stakeholder, and I have a large connection to the community as well.
Thank you. Do you mind writing down your email address for me before you go on an index card and handing it? Thank you. Great.
I would suggest she's on Zoom. She couldn't be here tonight. She's very sick right now. But Dr. Chantel Nixon Clark would be a good one. She's very active in the community, lives here currently, and has great outreach ability.
Thank you. Some of the people I interviewed indicated they would be interested in participating. So I heard that, and some of you were suggested also by others of you. So there's like a whole cross thing happening there. Yeah. Question.
Could I make a plug for MCE, maybe even having a permanent seat on that?
what's
MCE, Missouri Coalition for the Environment. I think
they're the only
because,
environmental group I could find.
yeah, I think it would be even potentially pertinent for us to name a seat for them because of their organization's history in uncovering all of the radioactive waste. Thank you, Kay Dry. Without her knowledge and research, we may not know about this in a public setting. Also, I think Just Moms has a really strong community backing. They've really done a great job at Westlake Landfill. And so I think having both of those organizations, having maybe even a seat set aside for them so we don't ever lose them on this council. We don't want funding to intervene with people being able to sit on these spaces. And so if we have a seat carved out for those places, then we know that they don't have to vie for it against, whatever up and coming new thing might pop up.
Thank you.
Admirable, and one of us would certainly accept with the understanding that we are not taking space for somebody that currently lives in this community and needs to, because it is very important that our organization does not speak for people. We train people to speak for themselves.
I grew up in Hazelwood. I have a lot of family in Hazelwood. I have been affected by this, and while I am Just Moms STL, I am also the chair of the CAG of Westlake Landfill. I have no problem of being on the CAG for North County and bringing our level of expertise in what needs to happen or whatever the case may be. But I agree with what Dawn said. We would never want to speak over anyone that actually lives currently in this community and or works in this community. We would be a resource more than we would to speak over or tell you guys what you need or in your community. Ashley, you also need to be on this as a resident, and all the work that you've put into this, you very much so need to be on this as well.
Thank you.
So where will agencies like Missouri DNR, Missouri Department of Conservation, where will they fit into your?
They go as liaisons, and there can be as many of them as any agency that wants to be in a liaison role could be. So they'd be on the email lists, and we could invite them to answer questions or give presentations. Yes, Ashley.
Glad you got your running shoes on. We might think about having a space for the migrant community. Our North County community is becoming more and more diverse. We have a lot of Latino families, we have a lot of Muslim families, but that also requires that information is translated into languages they know and understand. And so if we have representation from, our Latino community, maybe like the imam from the Islamic Center, or some other representation there, we might be able to better translate across different cultures and different languages this information so that we're not leaving people out.
Can you just, I think you were speaking quickly. I couldn't
I'm
hear.
sorry, I
Did
speak
you
at
actually suggest an organization or two, or were it just the
the migrant community as kind of the overarching, particular to our Latino communities and our Muslim communities?
Thank you.
It's dangerous just leave me with the mic, Jen.
So I agree with Ashley on all of that. My question is, obviously this room is not full enough for the representation that needs to happen here. And I guess the question is how do we make that happen right now? It seems like there needs to be a community outreach right now, more so than there needs to be this recommendation being formed.
So we could, like what I was thinking was next is figuring out who's going to fill that seat, and that could happen if the seats, whatever they are, we can make seats for whoever we want, and we can have some unfilled if we want to get going in the next 2 months and haven't solved the problem. That's one way to do it that comes to my mind.
Because I'm afraid if we fill these seats, we're not filling them with
the right people.
The right people. Not that any of these
Yeah.
people are not the right people, you know what I'm saying? But there's a whole community out there that
Is there I hear a couple of descriptions of who's missing. There are residents living in some of the neighborhoods right along the creek, and some non-English as a first language members in the community are the two I'm hearing most loudly. I also heard the clergy idea, which isn't up here. If we left spaces for those, if we are not able to fill them, would that meet the need? And or do a couple of people want to work with me to think about a couple of those gaps?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is there are so many people still in this area that have no idea about this issue, specifically along the creek. Kristen.
I think looking at the room, most of us don't even, I mean, some of us obviously have the room, but a lot of us
Right.
don't. So the residents that are affected and impacted most are actually age. So I don't know if we can partner on outreach or some way to get out to the community.
Between Just Moms and Kristen with MCE over the past couple of years, our focus has been on outreach, and it's hard. You know, it's been very, very difficult to get information out. Even the Army Corps Food Rep meetings, people are not well attended. And some of that is because of the location that they're having their meetings. But other reasons are because there's no outreach. And so, you know, Kristen and myself, with some of it, over 1,000, 2,000 door knockers, you know, that we put on, door hangers that we put on doors. So I think the first step is that we have to figure out a way to get more people the information.
Thank you.
So.
See Dawn and then Katie.
I was going to say, my first thought, to echo what Kristen and Karen just said and what Ashley just said, is to get with Danielle over here with St. Louis County. You know, we have what, 3 St. Louis County Council districts. Gretchen Bangert's, we've got Shalonda Webb and Rita Days, right? Yeah, so they couldn't be here tonight because this is council meeting, but, you know, what we should do is since they're not in this room, and then Dr. Nixon Clark is on to get with everybody and try and get, and you've got contacts with the school, right? So we should brainstorm, okay, you can do outreach to the school. How can they help you do outreach to the school and pull these people in for a next meeting similar to this to go over to fill the rest of the seats? You know, because the county council members can do mailers, they can do a lot of stuff. And then we can also, Senator Hawley's office was in the room, see if maybe they're able to send out some kind of a mailer or whatnot to just specific targeted zip codes along the creek. You know, and see if we can get these additional resources going.
Let's take a comment from Katie, and then we have a comment online.
No, that's a great idea. And it kind of connects to what I was thinking. I think it might be a good idea to maybe ask local high schools and get a representative of students from either each high school or either each district. Because I think that would be a great way. One, we could inform the families of the issue, but then also we could get some younger people in here to come, a youth cabinet member.
Thank you. Let's go online.
Okay, so there was.
Okay, so you have to speak up for this room, though.
I'm sorry, there was a comment online. Chantal Jones says there's also a lack of trust and outreach.
Yep, thank you, Chantal. So I would like to, can I just respond to a few of those? I think once a committee is formed, it is not static. And it will change and can change over time as people see how it's working, trust it, show up for a few meetings. Then they might say, oh, I'm interested, like I might want to be part of it. I don't think we have to solve everything right now. I think we want to set it up in the best possible way and make spaces. Let's try to fill it. Let's try to do it great. And if we can't, if we know we're not quite there, I don't think we want to wait months and months to form because we have a couple of gaps. And not everybody in the community is going to care about the CAG in particular, but I think it's so important, and I hear all of you saying, to know about the cleanup, the contamination and the cleanup. And so maybe part of the conversation with the committee is, should we hold a public information session that's designed for the public? Maybe that's that. Maybe it's the CAG meetings, but sometimes the technical level is designed for a group that's going to go deep. And maybe there's a different thing we want to hold for the public every quarter, every 6 months. Here's the update about this cleanup in this site for anyone who's interested, and we do it in a different way. I just think there are a few ways to solve for some of that. Yes, in the back.
I don't know the exact detail, because I heard some of it and I didn't. But there's something that's going to go across the government's desk. And it's a matter of whether he signs it or not. And it's happening now. So that's why I say, if you're curious, listen to the news tonight. And you get an update.
Federal government you're talking about?
No.
State. The state bill. Oh, right. Okay. Great. Thank you. They're going to start doing investigations. Their own state testing. Thank you.
And I think that's because probably somebody from Washington DC came here and went with him wherever he went. And I think all of this is political, and that's what happens. So we'll see.
You got the attention, so now you're getting something. Yeah. Nice. Yes.
I think we have to think outside the box for the outreach. I mean, this has been going on for years. It's the same people at every meeting. We always come and we always hope it's going to be a big turnout. And we get here and it's like, oh, hi. Same people are here again. Everywhere I go, I meet people and I say, do you know about the radioactive waste in St. Louis? And they look at me like I have two heads. I went to my old neighborhood, which was Wedgwood, and I had a friend pass away. So I was over there reminiscing, and a lady across the street walked out because I was sitting in front of a house and she was checking to see what I was doing. Long story short, her family moved in when I lived there, and she knew of us. And we got to talking. Both parents have died of cancer. She knows nothing about this. And so I stood and talked to her for a long time. And as I was walking away, she goes, what about the kids now? And I'm like, yes, they're still being affected, but we've got to come up with a way to get out there. She never watches the news. She doesn't pay attention to that. So how do you reach these people? She has no children. You know, and like I said, it's the same people every meeting and has been for years. So that's going to be the biggest struggle we have, is getting the outreach and getting people informed. And most of what I hear is when you tell them about it, well, how do you get the money? This isn't about money. This is about, yeah, your health and protecting people, you know, so.
Thank you. Yeah, let's go to Ashley. Right. We should leave a mic back. Oh, she has one. She has it.
Resourceful.
Oh,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Tim.
Sorry. You have your own microphone? Awesome. I was just curious, knowing that there's like, what, 5 zip codes? How many people live in the Coldwater Creek watershed? Like, how many people is it?
According to the APSDR, at the last census, I think within 1 mile of the creek, the whole 14 miles, is 60 plus thousand. Yeah, this is just what the Army Corps is like. Yeah, just the Coldwater, I'm sorry, not the Army Corps, the APSDR was last year. Yes. But you're absolutely correct, it's much, much money.
There are 50,000 people in Florissant alone. There are 18,000 students in the Hazelwood School District. So if that helps to give you a population size of impacted communities, it's way big.
That's a lot of kids.
I was going to ask, oh shoot, now
Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
like beginning to lose it, what I was going to ask.
We were talking about before this.
Outside the box outreach.
Oh, thank you. Outside the box outreach. I know this isn't terribly outside the box, but maybe there would be an opportunity for the EPA to put out some information that says Coldwater Creek is impacted by radioactive waste. Making the definitive statement helps to create the understanding of the community that this is a real deal problem. Having a informational workshop for the community online, it may be various points during the day, but also using that informational workshop as a place to inform people about the upcoming CAG, its formation, and maybe repeating a little bit of this here so that we could potentially solicit a few more names from, you know, the fresh folks of eyes wide open kind of folks. But anything that we can do to further that information, tie it to legitimacy, and then get us more people.
Thank you. So over here to the green, can we get a microphone to the person in green, and then we'll come to the front. What? Wendy, thank you. See, if you had name tags, I would call on you by name. Yes.
Thank you. I guess I had a question about the ultimate pathway that people will take to join the committee, because we're talking a lot about general outreach and the content of public meetings and the size of the public. But as far as the mechanism of actually bringing people onto this governing board, I was wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit about how you see that. So say there are folks in the different categories that emerge, and it sounds like there's a whole lot of folks, you know, that could potentially be in a place where this is relevant to them. How do you pick ultimately who will serve?
It is such a weird moment. I think I said this to some of the interviewees, where there is no, like, we are forming this group, but it should be, once it's formed, you all get to decide what your rules are and what the process is. So it's this weird, right, and we'll set up the charter. So what the easy answer, the easy seats are going to be the ones where there's an obvious organization, and I go to the organization and I say, we would really like to have someone from the Coalition for the Environment. Who should it be? And they will say, here's our member, here's our alternate. What's harder is this community rep side, and what I've been listening for is where a lot of names are coming up repeatedly, or there's reasons that people are like, this person would be really helpful and have a voice that other people don't have here, but it's not very perfect. And forming one option would be to, you know, you can like form a group that's going to review them, but who gets to be on the group becomes it's like a sort of ripple effect.
So it sounds like the steering committee, the original steering committee that will maybe engineer some of these processes, will be appointed in some ways, people who step forward
sort of
in a fluid way.
The first
right.
iteration of the CAG, but then the CAG will exist, and then it can do what it wants. But we want to get it as good as we can.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you for asking that question.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's a hard one. But.
And I guess a final comment I would have is that it would seem that meetings, once they materialize, as open to the public as possible is so important, because I feel like a lot of this happened because there wasn't openness at certain times in the past, and assuming that whatever's conveyed would be too complicated for the public to take in, if any member of the public would want to. I think they should have that chance. And they can always ask a question, you know, if they didn't understand, but I think it should be open. But those are my two thoughts.
I think Kristen had the next hand.
Thank you.
I have an older daughter, so forgive me if this doesn't exist anymore, but when we're talking about doing outreach, does Peach Jar still exist through the schools? Yeah, can we send out flyers that way potentially to parents to try to get people?
You doesn't have to because that will just make them, as far as like setting them out. So, I mean, my students just made a bunch of posters. We could easily just put that into our Peach Jar and send that out next week, which
nice.
I will. I'll just
You're like, hey.
Let's do that. Yeah.
An email or something, so let's say.
You would have to. We would need to say we're looking for this and this and this, like what, you know, sort of the like, we can do that. I think we can.
So I can put
probably
like
do that.
information
Let's
about
think.
joining the CAG in there as well. Like if your family are interested in helping.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah, I got it.
More-
Sorry.
More community.
Absolutely.
Yes.
One other idea is with summer coming up, you're going to have all these festivals going on, is maybe get a booth out there.
It's a table.
Get a list of festivals coming up.
I feel like just this distinction between finding people who are going to have the time and inclination to sit on a committee that's going to meet a bunch of times and informing people about the contamination and the cleanup. I would like to pull them apart because they're both important, but one is like a micro task and the other is not a micro task at all. Please.
No, I didn't have a question.
Oh, you're just holding the mic. It's like the collective arms holding.
Over the last 4 years, my next door neighbors who are renters have changed every year, and they're multi-generational families usually. So there are kids who go to the local elementary school, there are students at the community college. There are people who are employed, some of them are working out of the state though and coming back, but they're a resource for their family. I think we need to understand that there are a lot of rental agencies renting properties in Florissant and Hazelwood and all throughout North County. The properties have been sold off that older residents have owned for many years and been bought up at higher rates, but our taxes keep going up because of that. But we haven't had a lot of these environmental issues addressed. So if we can at least notify people who are coming through this area, I think they might want to be more engaged.
Thank you.
I've got a comment from online. What about putting the word out in churches?
Putting the word out in churches, yes.
For church outreach suggestion, there's Metropolitan Congregations United. There's Beth Gutzler is a environmental activist. She's one of the I'm losing my brain here. But she would be a good person to reach out to. I can connect.
What's her last name?
Gutzler, Gutzler.
It's actually legal protection as well. We're partnering with her already on a number of things.
Thank you. One other organization that comes to mind is a Red Circle. I don't know if they've come up in conversation.
The Red Circle?
A Red Circle.
A Red Circle.
They're kind of an umbrella group that covers a lot of community development in North County. And one person that I know is on their board is Christina Evans, and she has had a connection with some really delicate research studies out of WashU. I worked with her there, and she has an interest in public health and has a little background. She's on their board, and so she would probably be a good person to reach out to, maybe to sit on the committee or find a good person for that public health hat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it seems like, looking at both of you, like we should probably write like here's the role, here's the commitment and the expectation, here are the seats, like in the next month, submit if here are 2 questions, like submit somewhere if you are interested in serving.
To be on the board, do you have to be local to the area?
I think in my estimation, the one that there might be some geographic part to would be the community representation piece. I think the other ones, if you are a staff person who works for the county and you live somewhere else and whatever the seat is, and they appoint you, like that's their seat to do whatever
I mean, like, I'm a former community member. I don't live in the area anymore. I come to every meeting. I drive an hour to get here. I would be happy to be a part of it.
So I think we should just ask the questions and see what we get, probably. I think that's one of the questions there might be differences of opinion on, and it probably, this committee, whatever it is not going to please everybody, but we'll do our best for it to mostly work for most people. I feel like we're kind of there. I don't feel like nobody's saying, don't do it this way. It should be 45 people, and it should only be virtual, and it should, I don't, I'm just trying to like go extreme. I think it's to like start this next, that it will get.
I mean, get the core lid down, get it out, get it going, but just make sure.
Make space.
That there's space in the event that others want to.
Yep, okay.
If anybody wants to take a seat.
I think, can I test with all of you? And then I think we should wrap as a group and we can keep chatting and you can come up. But my instinct is not to make it as big as anybody who wants to sit on it, because then you get 60 people, right? I'm not doing that? Okay. And it's more like more contained so it works as a group. Okay. Just wanted to check. But then, yeah. Well, and I also usually like to say, not term limited in a limit, but terms in a every 2 years or every whatever, I will check in, the facilitator will check in and see, do you want to do the next X period of time, so that seats open up when somebody's like, oh, actually, I can't do it anymore. And you keep having people sitting at the table.
Another couple of comments.
Are these all Chantel? Are they Chantel? Are they from Chantel? Or other
No.
people? Are there other people? How many
No,
people?
this is from Kay Lamberts.
Great, thank you.
The suggestion or the comment was, we need former people because they know the history. Newer homeowners are not always aware of the issues.
We need people who are aware of the long history, not just the new. Great. Okay. All right. Final comments you want to make while this whole group is together here tonight?
What about an opportunity for people to be assigned in a very temporary spot on the seat, with the idea that they are going to actually turn it over to somebody with a better fit, like hold the seat temporarily for 3 months, but their job is to find somebody that speaks a different language than English to fill their seat, or fills the seat for colleges or universities or some other perspective. Like their job is really to seek and find, and once they seek and find, they can vacate their seat, but not until that point. So you have a little inspiration maybe behind it.
I've never used that. I've used the model for school students of having a contact person who's a staff person at the high school to find people, but I have not had people sitting in a seat that's then turned over. It's interesting. I think about it. Thank you.
It's a good turnout tactic. If someone can't come, you have them fill their seat.
Thank you. All right, I think, do you want final thoughts from either of you?
I don't really have anything. I appreciate all the feedback, y'all's time. Anything that you all get from me, because we have a community distribution group that I send, notifications and things. Anything that you receive from me, please feel free to share that however is best for the community. Share with your networks, do anything to get the word out about this. That's kind of why we have that distribution group. That's something that the CAG is going to help get the word out for things as well. But I think that's it. Yeah, I think we're good.
Thank you so much for your time and wisdom, and write down more details on index cards and hand them in if you have other ideas, including your contact info if we might want to follow up with you about anything. Or email me. You have my phone and my email right on there. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for coming.
nice.